Hello, and welcome to My Community. I'm Fred Albert, the host. My Community is brought to you by the Library Television Network, and we're very happy to have you with us today. Today, as my guest, I have a gentleman named Chris Price, who's the president and co-founder of Mountain Care Network. Mountain Care Network is a community-based licensed behavioral health center. MCN was created to increase accessibility to mental health services and decrease the stigma associated with mental health treatment in West Virginia. MCN believes that a healthy mind leads to a healthy life, which creates stronger families and communities. Chris, welcome to My Community. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you get your start here in life? And let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so born and raised in West Virginia. Both of my parents are from Southern West Virginia. Proud graduate of Nitro High School.
All right.
Then had the opportunity to stay here in my backyard. Went to the University of Charleston for an undergraduate and graduate experience. Then after that, really, trying to find my way, and was fortunate enough to find a great opportunity working in the financial services industry. Then went into nonprofit fundraising and worked at West Virginia State University for a time. While there, met my amazing wife, and we had the opportunity to move to Raleigh, North Carolina, kind of mid 2010, the 2012-ish. 2014 area. Then she is a clinical therapist, and so moved to Raleigh. I was fundraising. She was doing some great work in the mental health industry. We were there for about 4 or 5 years, had a couple kids, and then really what happened was we never lost touch of West Virginia, and so we had a number of friends and people we were connected to that passed away from substance-related deaths or just really sad situations. And so as we looked like what was next for us, she said, "Hey, I want to start my own mental health agency," and we just prayed about it, and now we're back in West Virginia doing work, trying to help our community.
So you and your wife Crystal are the co-founders of Mountain Care Network. Mountain Care Network. I like the name, by the way.
Thank you.
I just happened upon it. One day I was driving down Quarrier Street in Charleston, and I see a building that was familiar to me because I know another entity was in that building once upon a time. Then it was vacant, and it used to be sort of, I saw people hanging out on the sidewalk, sleeping there overnight. I've seen broken glass. The building was just becoming an eyesore pretty much. But this one particular day I drove by and I saw a table set up and people handing out food, and I thought, what's going on there? And then I took another look on another day, and it's really nicely cleaned up. You've got a nice logo in the window for Mountain Care Network. And that's how I got in touch with you. So tell us about why did you start here in West Virginia, and how's it going?
Well, I'll say we were in a much smaller space right up the street when we moved back. It was a one office space right up the street. And
you've been in.
So we've been established. We are very fortunate and blessed. We will be celebrating our 5-year anniversary.
Oh,
June
5
1.
years! Wow.
Yes. And so when we moved back, Crystal and I, it was really Crystal going into homes, going into schools, offering these amazing services to kids and families. And so we really didn't need a big office, right? And then COVID hit because we moved back right in the midst of COVID, right before kind of everything shut down.
Sure.
And so in the midst of COVID need for services, it just grew. And so we grew from 1 therapist to 2 to 3, and now we have right at 48 full-time employees.
Wow.
Like I said, very blessed. And so as you can imagine, one small office right up the street, really couldn't suffice, even though the primary service we offer is community-based mental health services, right? We are in the community, but we still need a nice office for our folks to come and do documentation, provide case management services, or do intakes, or even offer some in-office visits. And so that's when we said, hey, we need a much larger space as we continue to grow and try and meet need. And that's how we ended up at the Mason Building. Okay. So you're right. When we, I guess you could say, took, took over the space, it was in rough shape. Right. But we are true believers in, like, look, we care a lot about people. We wanted the space that we offer services to be bright and airy and welcoming and also accessible, right? Like on a bus line.
Sure.
That people could also feel was not in some ivory tower that, they couldn't walk in off the street and say, hey, I need services. And so what's amazing about what that space used to be and what it is now, we offer a lot of services to the same populations of people. We've had our grand opening. We gave away, we actually had a community cookout then. We had 120 meals from folks that were educators to folks that were business leaders, to our unsheltered population, right?
Okay.
And they're all breaking bread and eating together at that space. And
which is what community is all about.
It really is. So what's beautiful about that is from creating that, we now have people coming in right off the street asking for services, unsheltered population, people that are seeking sobriety help, people that are seeking help for severe mental illness that thought otherwise, hey, maybe it wasn't available or accessible. And now because we're in that location, people feel very, very, welcomed to right. be able to come in and receive those services. And that's what we wanted.
Sure. I understand that. And there is such a need. I think all of us agree that there's such a need because we see people on the street all the time. And we know that some of the reason they're on the street is substance abuse. Mm-hmm. But I would say a large part is mental health mm-hmm. issues. I've been around long enough to know that things have changed for whatever reasons, but when someone needs mental health services, they don't always know where to go or mm-hmm. how to reach out. So you're telling me that people could actually walk in your office and
Without
say, I need some help, and this is what I need help with.
Mm-hmm.
I was very impressed when I went to the website, your website at Mountain Care.
My wife will be very happy to hear that, by the way. She's the one that, she mans that thing and does an amazing job.
You tell her she's doing a great job, and I said so. But I was very impressed. I was very impressed with the staff. When I clicked on a button or clicked on whatever to find out about your staff, I see that I know one of your staff or a couple of your staff people.
That's awesome.
Who are offering services. But it's very impressive. And I was, wow, the range of services that you provide or get people help with was pretty phenomenal. I saw something about suicide prevention is
yes.
on there, and that's a great need. But so you said something about working with the schools. Do you go into schools and make presentations, or how do you work with our schools? And you're not just in Kanawha County.
No.
You're in several counties. So do you want to talk about where you're actually located?
Yeah, so speaking to suicide prevention, we love working with Mark Mason in Kanawha County Schools. They do an amazing job making sure their students and families know that there are resources available out there for just for folks that are having those really negative thoughts, right? And
okay.
so we love that partnership and we love working alongside them. But yeah, we initially started in Kanawha County. Now we have our office that you've seen in Charleston. We also have an office in Dunbar. We have an office in Logan and Boone County as well. And that's primarily because that's where my dad's from, is Southern West Virginia.
Right.
And I think just having gone there a lot and realizing there's great need in that space, if
sure.
we can go there and help folks, then that's what we want to do. But we, right now, I guess you could say our reach is Kanawha, Boone, Putnam, Lincoln, Logan. We have some folks in Clay County as well and Mason County as well.
And did you mention Cabell?
And
earlier?
Cabell, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we're starting to get some. We have a couple clients that we see in that direction as well.
So, do they come? Do they all have offices to go to, or is it telehealth, or
yeah.
how do you provide services?
We're in the community, like I said.
Okay.
I mean, for our folks, it's in schools. It's in homes.
Okay.
Some of that's in office. Some of that's telehealth. But we are really rolling our sleeves up in the primary. We always kind of have a hierarchy that we tell folks, especially when they're looking to come on board and work alongside us, is, hey, if you're coming on as a provider here at Mountain Care Network, the hierarchy that we see of providing services is really community-based is number one for us. Then, we do have some nice offices. Utilize those if you can, and then telehealth as needed.
What if someone needs to be hospitalized?
We have great referral resources there. So what we will do if that occurs is we immediately, whether it's a case manager, supportive counselor, or clinical therapist, immediately has direct access to whatever type of support that we feel they need clinically.
And who pays for it? How do you? I mean, you're a for-profit.
We are.
Organization, so someone has to
Insurance.
pay for those services.
It's insurance reimbursement,
Okay.
and for us, not only is it insurance reimbursement, but it's also we have a sliding fee scale for folks that are underinsured or uninsured, and then we do like everyone else with co-pays and credit card payments as well. But I mean, we see our mental health agency like many doctors' offices, right?
Okay.
And that's really, it's through insurance.
So if someone comes in off the street and they are living on the street and they
Correct.
have pretty much everything that they have in a grocery cart, you're not going to turn them away.
Absolutely
You're going to
not.
find some way to help that person. And does that happen much?
Happens. It actually has happened a lot more recently. We'd say somewhere between about once or twice every 2 weeks.
Is that right?
Yes, and so we have a great person in our office, Aretta Lynn, and so as that occurs, Aretta comes out, she kind of does an initial intake, figures out what we have going on, and then her primary responsibility is to figure out, for example, if they need stabilization, withdrawal management, more of an inpatient setting, who are some of the partner organizations that we can work with to get them admitted. If it's housing support, she may reach out to the CARES team here in Charleston to figure out what availability there is with different shelters or different placement for them in that way.
You must be reading my mind, because that was going to be my next question. If someone comes in off the street and they're apparently suffering from a mental health issue and they need housing, you're a resource to try to find
Correct.
a place for them to settle in or to spend a temporary time anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think we act more as, we act more as advocates, right? Like, we understand we don't provide housing, but we know some great organizations that do. And so for us, we've now been doing this case management long enough, we've been doing this connection, if you will, long enough to where when we have someone come in, sometimes a lot of times they have living arrangements,
Okay.
right? And if that is the case, they're coming in because they want additional supports, right? That may be support as in, hey, I'm dealing with anxiety, or I'm dealing with some sort of other issue. Can you put me on a list to begin getting treatment?
Okay.
But sometimes if they aren't housed, right, or if they're dealing with housing insecurity, then immediately Aretta's making phone calls trying to figure out like what is available and how can we get them stabilized in a space to where, look, they're protected from the elements, and then we can begin working from there on, whether it's the mental health stuff, the housing, and kind of going from there.
Sounds like you have a great team put together. And has that been difficult, or have people been, how do you find your people? How do you find your team? Do they come to you and say, "I need a job,"
Yeah,
or
well,
have you?
sometimes, I mean, sometimes we've just been prayerful about it, and everybody that is on our team, we truly believe is there because they're meant to be, and that is from the folks that are welcoming, from coming in the door and saying,
Right.
"Hey, welcome," to our practice managers, to our clinicians, and our supportive counselors. Like, everyone that is at Mountain Care Network feels purpose. That they have the passion, they have the energy. This isn't a place where like you come and you work for Mountain Care Network. No, these are our teammates. This is our squad, if you will, right? And we're out here just trying to help folks.
So, where do you see the future? Do you think you will continue to expand, or you don't want to expand too much
No.
that you can't handle it? And you sound like you are pretty active and stretched pretty thin already. But do you see the future? Would you like to be in every county in West Virginia, or is that a possibility? Or what do you see as going forward?
Yeah, that is a great question. Crystal and I are oftentimes led. We're led by our faith, and I cannot. I just we are a mental health agency that is established to help any and every person in this state. We don't care about ethnicity. We don't care about sexual orientation. We don't care about gender. We don't care about any socioeconomic piece of it. If you need help in this state, it is our job. We truly believe this, like Crystal and I believe it.
Right.
It is our job, our purpose to get you help, right?
Sure.
So, with that being said, I can't give you an answer. I know that we are fighting daily to help kids, right? Because the way we see it is, it starts with kids, and so some of that support leads to helping parents, undoubtedly, trying to be this support that we can for educators and school systems. But then there's this other piece that has really kind of gotten our attention, and it's the unsheltered population, because it's an unbelievably vulnerable population.
Right.
That when you sit down and hear stories, a lot of these folks, they didn't have a shot from the jump, right? Like they were kind of born into it a lot of times. And then you've got this whole area over here of substance use, right? And addiction, and folks that are in recovery, and making sure that we have the resources and the foundation put together for those people to be successful.
Right.
And then on top of that, right, you have the aging population,
Yes.
which is it's growing, and
is growing.
as it grows, trying to make sure services keep up with that growth. And so I can't give you an answer. I can just say that I lose sleep over all of it.
I bet you do.
And it's not because of opportunity. It's because I truly believe, like Crystal and I, we want people to be happy, right?
Well, it sounds like you are very passionate about what you're doing, and you have a compassion for people. Of those areas that you just mentioned, young people, the elderly, the substance abuse group, it's so unfortunate, but is there any one group that sticks out, that you're seeing things now that maybe we didn't see 5 or 10 years ago? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, during COVID, we've found out there's a lot of people who feel isolated or felt isolated
Yes.
during that time, and that has continued because they've sort of stepped back and aren't as social as perhaps they once were, or they never were, and it's gotten worse, and people are lonely. Do you see that, or is there any one area that is more challenging than another? It all is challenging, of course. But
That's really, I think, on a clinical side, that's a very clinical question, right? And I would love to have some of our practitioners, our clinicians, my wife, Crystal, or Jennifer Jones, to kind of answer that question as they have their sleeves rolled up and they're in it daily. I can speak, I think, to the fact of trauma is rampant in this region.
Yes.
And
Because of
I think
all of those things?
I think trauma is rampant because of isolation. I think trauma becomes more and more prevalent, specifically because people are dealing with tough situations day in and day out. And who am I to determine what is traumatic to another person, right?
Yeah,
And so as we see untreated trauma morph into things like addiction, anger, depression, oftentimes it's our clinicians are working very, very hard trying to kind of unwind all of that, and it's difficult. The client is working hard to figure it out, right? Like, why am I feeling this way? The clinician is working hard to help them to figure it out. And so I think what I have learned in all of this, just getting to your question, is that it is going to be a tedious process.
Yes.
Right? And we've got to be patient. We've got to do the work. But we have seen success from Mountain Care Network's perspective. We see that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's talk about success.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, and you may or may not, but do you have a percentage of the success rate, or do you have something that you gauge by? I'm sure that
We do.
someone wants to know.
Mm-hmm.
How successful have you been in getting people in a better place, to a better place?
So, and you read it, when you read kind of a little bit about Mountain Care Network, our big piece, so each person is their own, case, if you will,
Sure.
right? Like each client, it's case by case for us. There is no one size fits all, right? And so success for one person is not, like success, it just looks different for everyone.
Sure.
But when you read on earlier, it's about decreasing stigma for mental health.
Do you think that is being decreased?
I think it is, and I'll tell you why. Is because the amount of people reaching out for services now, it's greater than it's ever been, and it's from individuals and people that historically never put much weight in mental health support. Right, but they're starting to see, hey, I've got a friend or I've got a family member who has said something that this helped them, right? And again, can't determine what success is there, right? Like I wish I could make it quantitative because I'm a data guy, right? Like I love numbers. But this space isn't really like that. I think this space is more along the lines of making sure that we keep track of people, making sure that we understand people ebb and flow in their need, and making sure that we are accessible and persistent in meeting that need. But just breaking down the stigma, we're seeing that. And I think that is somewhat of a barometer of people being more accepting and welcoming to saying, hey, there may be an issue and I need to get it addressed.
So that's good to hear, that people are, for some anyway, and I guess it's an individual, as you mentioned, it's an individual thing. It's something someone has to recognize on their own. I've got this issue going on, I need help, and it's okay to ask for help. And knowing that there's a place like Mountain Care Network that I can go, non-judgmental, very welcoming, I'm going to be okay to go there and talk to someone.
Yep.
And they're going to help me find a resource to help with whatever it is that I need.
Yes. And again, you spoke to it earlier, right? Like the ability to do that and not care about one's ability or how it's going to get paid for, right? Like for us, we understand that we live in a very under-resourced state,
Sure.
a very poor state in many regards. And so we deal with a lot of people that think, they kind of shy away from it because they're like, well,
I can't afford that.
I can't afford it. And so what we tell people all the time is, let's have a conversation. Come, let us worry about that. I think our main priority, though, is the well-being of people.
You have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And you start by talking to someone
Without
and
a doubt.
saying, I recognize, and it's not something to be ashamed of for someone to say, I'm lonely, or I don't have any friends anymore. My friends have all left or passed away or whatever, especially with elderly people. And not just the elderly, because there are a lot of young people for whatever reason that have passed away, but to say, I need help. Things have changed for me, and it's not worrying about how am I going to pay for this, but I need to talk to someone first, and then maybe they can help
Yes.
me find those resources. You mentioned that we're under-resourced here in this state. How do we change that? Do we have to do something legislatively, or where do we go to ask for more resources?
Look, I am not smart to say smart enough rather to say to answer the question in whole. Nor am I not definitely not in the political realm. So
Right.
whether it's legislation or bills introduced at Mountain Care Network, we utilize the resources we have available to us into licensed behavioral health centers to meet need of people. When I say under-resourced, what I mean is we have big state problems with a smaller population of people, right, per capita, and in time, and we see it, right, whether it's the foster care system, whether it's support for folks that are dealing with addiction, and the unsheltered population. All of us, all of our colleague organizations, right, we are all feeling like we need more people. We need more clinicians. We need more people that are passionate about this work to do this work. And so I do believe to an extent that if we can figure out that workforce piece, when I say workforce from a mental health agency perspective, that means clinicians, that means supportive counselors, that means case managers. If we can figure that out and figure out ways to keep people here, oh man, you can begin to see progress being made. So I don't know if it's a legislative answer. I don't know if it's a higher education answer, right? I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. But I do believe that if we can figure out ways to get people to stay here and offer these services to folks that need them, we'll begin to see a change.
Right. And I think it's also part of being a part of the solution. It's so easy to criticize, and we all do, I guess, from time to time. We see people that are on the street and we think, oh, they need to get a job, or they need to go to work, or why are they out doing this? When it's not just that easy to go and get a job, but it takes all of us working together, promoting a healthy community. And as we said earlier, in order to have a healthy community, you've got to have healthy minds working together. Chris, I can't thank you enough for being our guest today. I look forward
This was
to
a blast.
maybe
I had a blast.
maybe having Crystal come and talk with us.
I know she would love to. I'm not going to speak for her.
Well, you tell her I'm going to call her.
Yeah, please.
But thank you for joining my community today. We have been so pleased to have Chris and the work that he's doing with Mountain Care Network here in West Virginia. Look up their website. You'll be very impressed. Thank you, and we will look forward to seeing you the next time.